Welcome, everyone. So, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our culinary medicine webinar series. My name is Jessica VanRoo, and I'm the executive chef at the UCI Susan Samueli Integrative Health Institute. Before we start, I want to review a few Zoom housekeeping items. We are recording the session. After the session, we will post this webinar on our website along with the recipes to download. Everyone will remain mute to limit distractions during the presentation. After the presentation, Monica and I and Dr. Purnell will moderate a Q&A session. Please take advantage of the Q&A feature to address questions to our panelists. So today, Dr. Purnell, our speaker today is Dr. Mickey Purnell. Dr. Purnell is a board certified UCI Health physician who specializes in family and integrative medicine. Her clinical interests include integrative medicine, lifestyle medicine, and precision medicine personalized for each individual. She earned her medical degree in Okayama University Medical School in Okayama, Japan. She completed a residency in family medicine at the University of Hawaii's John A. Burns School of Medicine. She also has received additional training in acupuncture, functional medicine, and yoga instruction. Dr. Purnell will be presenting food myths. What do we believe? Afterwards, I'll be demonstrating a vegetarian Japanese ramen broth and a collard green lasagna. And everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Mickey Purnell.
Thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to meet you all in this wonderful lecture. We're going to have a great time today. And let me start sharing my slides. Okay, so I'm going to start the slide share. And can you see my slides? Oh, PowerPoint. Okay, so I think that, okay, so today we will talk about food myth. What do we believe? And there are 5 food myths that I wanted to go over today. And the first one, first of all, I would like to mention that I do not have any affiliation with any of the products that can be possibly mentioned during this presentation. Food myth 1, you are not what you eat. So especially when you're eating like some junk food, sometimes this is what you wanted to believe. However, the reality is you are what you eat. So, and if we say it more precisely, you are what you can digest and absorb. And also, you are what your microbiomes feed you when you feed your microbiomes. So if I can explain that more, let's take a look at the digestive process. We have digestive, we first put the food in our mouth. We use our teeth and grind the food, and we use our tongue. And also we use our saliva and digestive enzymes to try digesting food, and we push the food to the next level, esophagus, by swallowing at pharynx, larynx area. And now the food moves down to the stomach from esophagus. Stomach is where we have stomach acid, and our body chemically break down the food. And also because of its powerful acidity, we can disinfect the food as well. Then at the same time, our liver produces bile acid, and that moves to gallbladder where the bile acid was being stored. Then with the demand, bile acid get released. When we eat fatty food, bile acid works as an emulsifier, and helps to digest the fatty food. Then the food moves to small intestine for nutrition absorption. And in the large intestine, that is a place for our microbiomes. So we have tons of enteric bacteria, primarily in our large intestine. And when we feed the food, especially the fermentable fiber-rich food, then our microbiome fermentate those fiber and releases short-chain fatty acid that can work as an anti-inflammatory chemicals for our body. So this is what's happening to in our body when we eat food. So when we actually look into large intestine bacteria, actually large intestine as a city. So you have your city, and if you're having enough police officers, firemen, and garbage disposable services in your city is very well organized, happy, and clean city. So there are certain microbiomes that works, like police officers and firemen and garbage disposable services. When we feed a wide variety of biodiverse diet, especially tons of vegetables, fruits, and nuts, and seeds, and whole grains, then our body feeds variety of the microbiomes, and our large intestines are populated with a diverse microbiomes. However, food lacks those fibers, then those bacteria couldn't stay in our intestine, and they leave, and pathogenic bacterial overgrowth could happen. So our body is an ecosystem. So this is the food myth number 2. Miso is unhealthy because of high salt content. So today, Chef Jessica is going to prepare using miso. So that's why I picked this as a myth, because miso does have some sodium. But is it really true? So actually, miso does not increase blood pressure. On the other hand, it slightly reduces blood pressure according to multiple studies. And ingredients of miso attenuate sympathetic nerve activity, and that could be relaxing the blood vessels, and that will lower the blood pressure. And also it reduces the heart rate as well. 2 bowls of miso soup per day may add about half teaspoon of salt to one's daily diet. Yet, those who had 2 or more bowls of miso soup every day appear to have 5 times lower risk of becoming hypertensive. So maybe anti-hypertensive effect of soy in the miso exceeds the hypertensive effect of the salt. Okay. And number 3 is cooking oil stayed stable before expiration date. So we do use cooking oils, and this is very, very important to know that actually when the company extract the oil and they put expected shelf life, and many companies on average, almond oil, they put 14 months is expected shelf life. However, when they put it to the test at the 68 degree, which is like the regular room temperature, and almond oil began to downgrade at 2 months. So the 14 months is the expiration date, but in 2 months after the almond oil was being squeezed, it started to downgrade. And avocado oil did better than almond oil. So the 7 months, it lasts 7 months, but the expected shelf life, the labels, they put 13 months. So when we go to the store and buy avocado oil, you need to look at the date and subtract about 6 months from the date, and you wanted to finish using that by that date, and you keep it in the refrigerator. So the hazelnut oil, it's not as bad because the 5 months they put the expiration date, but it actually lasted for 7.5 months. And the macadamia nut oil, the similar situation, they put 5 months typically as an expiration date, but then it lasted for 15 months. And grapeseed oil is about half of the duration. Rice bran oil is about accurate. And toasted sesame oil, they typically put 15 months as expected, the expiration date, but 6 months, in 6 months you start to downgrade. Then walnut oil downgrade really fast too. So when we choose cooking oil, you wanted to be careful. And actually, the cooking with the cooking oil started to become more and more recognized that it may not be the healthiest way to cook, but we do saute with the oil, and also certain fat-soluble vitamins become more available when you consume the oil. So sometimes the healthy cooking techniques that we use, like water sauteing instead of the oil sauteing, and add the oil at the end. So, but avocado oil is pretty stable with the temperature. And also, when you consume within 7 months after being made, then it is still good. So that is kind of the important things that we wanted to keep in mind when we shop the cooking oil. So food myth number 4, seaweed has no health benefit. And so the seaweed, I'm from Japan, and seaweed is a part of the daily diet. However, after I moved to the States, then I need to be very conscious about eating seaweed on regular basis, because the reality is it does have health benefit. So daily nori consumption, this is a picture of nori, and daily nori consumption was inversely related to breast cancer risk. Seaweed favorably alters estrogen and phytoestrogen metabolisms, and these changes likely include the modulation of colonic bacteria. And also, seaweed is a great source of iodine. Thyroid hormones are made of iodine, and it's very important to have an ideal iodine intake every day. Kombu has the highest estimated amount of the iodine. So about 2.5 milligram per dry weight of 1 gram. So this is the most strongest iodine concentration among the seaweed. Nori has very minimum, 0.0369 milligram per gram of iodine. Wakame is in between. So wakame has about 0.140 milligram. So the daily recommended intake is 0.15 milligram. So when we think about eating 1 gram of dry weight wakame, just a little bit more than 1 gram of dry weight wakame every day, and it'll achieve the ideal iodine consumption. The food myth number 5, sugar alternatives are healthier. So everybody knows that sugar is like toxic poison. It causes inflammation, it reduces our white cell functions, and also it spikes the sugar level. But not all the sugar alternatives are the same. So let's take a look at one by one. The sucralose can alter colonic microbiomes. Sucralose can impair blood sugar regulation. So because of that, this is not the healthy kind of the sugar alternatives. Stevia can be converted to steviol by intestinal bacteria in the rats. And once it's converted to the steviol, it's toxic to our DNA. WHO reports that under 4 milligram per kilogram consumption is a safe permissive range of the consumption of the stevia. So if it's translated to stevia sweetened soda, it's about 2 cans per day is your limit for the stevia. So that small amount of the stevia can be a realistic sugar alternatives. But stevia does have a little bit of underlying bitter taste, and it's not that much, that much delicious. Stevia is not delicious. So let's take a look at erythritol. Erythritol is a family of polyol. Polyols are like xylitol, mannitol, sorbitol, something end with the O, and it tends to cause bloating because it's not absorbed by the intestine. But it is a powerful antioxidant. So it doesn't spike the sugar level, and because it's not toxic to our microbiomes, and it does taste as similar as sugar, erythritol can be a really good sugar alternative. It's a little bit expensive, but you can consider using erythritol. It can cause maybe minimum bloating. I do use erythritol myself, and it doesn't cause bloating, but I don't have any like underlying intestinal issues, so maybe it's better. So allulose is another alternative. It helps to reduce subcutaneous fat with a human study. And blood sugar reduction studies and LDL cholesterol reduction studies results are still mixed. So FDAs are saying that it's generally considered safe. So allulose or the erythritol are the possible two sugar alternatives that can be considered. So there are 5 food myth takeaways that we have today. Is 1, you are what you eat. You are what you can absorb and you can digest. 2, miso does not raise blood pressure. 3, cooking oil can be oxidized before expiration date. 4, eating optimal amount of seaweed can be helpful for health. 5, choose safe sweeteners. Erythritol and allulose seems the best choices. And that's the end of the presentation. And do you have any questions?
I think we have a few questions.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica, and I'm the Director of Integrative Health Programs here at the Institute, and I'm happy to read off some of the questions, Dr. Purnell, for you. The first question we have here is that there is information out there that says too much soy impacts estrogen. Is that a myth?
The soy actually has estrogen receptor beta affiliation. So because of that, the studies for like breast cancer survivors, the soy intake is helpful. There are 2 types of the estrogen receptors. Receptor alpha accelerate like proliferation of the breast tissues. However, the beta blocks that. So because of that, the soy intake is tied into the better outcomes. So yes.
Thank you. The next question we have here is, isn't it odd that they put longer expiration dates because they usually use them as marketing tools to make more money?
Yeah.
What happens? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
What happens if you consume it after the time frame that you're mentoring? Do the benefits diminish or is it harmful?
Yeah. So the oxidized oil is not healthy. So the oxidized oil can cause more like oxidative stress to our body. So because of that, we wanted to minimize. So one good strategy is to buy small bottle of oil instead of the large one. You know, when we when we go shopping, it seems like better deal with the bigger bottles. But when it comes to oil, because of the food shelf life and also the oil start get downgrade, and you wanted to avoid taking the oxidized oil. So because of that, you buy small bottles and you use it within the the expiration, like within the date that my slide shows that actual laboratory test confirmed that when is the time frame that they start to oxidize. So before the oil becomes bad, you want it to consume.
Great, thank you. And we'll now shift gears. I know Chef Jess is ready for our demonstration, so super excited to see that. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me now? Yes? Good. All right, no, I will do it this way. Okay, so we are going to do a ramen first, and then we are going to do a collard green lasagna. Hold on one sec. Okay. So right now, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna switch over. So we're working with the new system here, and I'm gonna jump around. And hopefully the cameras will follow me. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make a sesame paste. And for the sesame paste, hold on, I need to do this all the way down. Okay, the sesame paste, we're gonna put in a blender. So here we go. Sesame seeds. And we're gonna add this in to a high blender. So it can be a blender, it can be a spice grinder, or better yet, it can be a mortar and pestle. We just want to make kind of like a powder out of this. We don't want to make a paste. Turn it on. And this is not a Vitamix. This is actually a brand called Clean Blend. And I'm going to turn everyone onto a new brand. This blender is actually only $149, I think, on Amazon. It's more powerful than a Vitamix, and it's more powerful than a Blendtec. So if you want, try looking this up. It's called Clean Blend. Sorry, I walked away. Okay, so we've got all of this sesame ready to go. Now we're gonna build on our ramen. So the way that we're gonna build on our ramen is we're gonna add a lot of aromatics. Got green onions, ginger, and a whole bunch of garlic that I already pureed, just like that. The first thing we're gonna do is take care of our green onions. So if you saw, they're dirty, they have dirt everywhere, and I am not going to wash it. What I'm going to do is this. Stack them up, trim off the ends. You can put these back in dirt or water. Monica, our special guest, will tell you that she has one that has lasted over a year. It's pretty impressive. All right, so now we're gonna go through the middle. And I'm gonna keep my white and green separate. So I'm gonna do this twice. I'm gonna stack them up and then push forward. And we're gonna use a lot of green onions and a lot of garlic and ginger, just so that we get the flavor of a rich broth.
Chef
so I'm gonna
Jess,
keep
this is
that separate.
Monica. I'm
Yes.
just going to interrupt for one moment. We're hearing an echo.
You are, huh? Hold on.
Hear me now? Yes? Hopefully?
Yes, that seems to be a bit better on my end.
Yay, okay, perfect. Okay, it makes my life easier too, because I was listening to myself talk and it was getting really annoying. So thank you, Monica. All right, so here we go. I've got a little bowl of water or a container of water. I'm gonna put my scallions or green onions straight in there. And then I'm gonna rinse it around just like that. What happens is the dirt will sink to the bottom and then you can scoop up the scallions from the top. So I'm keeping the whites and the greens separate for a reason. The main reason being that I am going to actually saute the whites and then keep the greens for garnish. I'm going to keep this to the side and we're going to saute this with our onion and ginger, and then we're going to cut the rest of this for garnish. So again, hold everything together, push forward, and chop. And it says about 8, so about 1 bunch is what you're looking for. There we go. So all of that goes in again. You can rinse that around. And don't pour this out to a strainer. Always go in and ladle up. Okay. And then we've got some ginger. For the ginger, what I want you to do is grab a spoon, ginger, and peel. So you can scrape the ginger with a spoon and it'll all come off. If you get to the little grooves in the middle and you can't get it out, it's all right. You don't need to get it out. There's nothing wrong with the skin other than sometimes it has a lot of dirt on it and it might make your soup a little bit more clouded or not as pretty. All right. And then I'm going to actually put this in a food processor. You can chop it up if you want. You can do it anyway. I'm going to use a food processor today for this. Just like I did for the garlic. And you can do a whole bunch at once. You can do a whole bunch at once and freeze it and then just take out what you need.
While you're doing that, we have an opportunity to have maybe one more question answered by Dr. Purnell. We have a question here, Dr. Purnell, about regarding nori sold in the US. What nori is healthy? Is the packaged kind sold at Trader Joe's healthy? Also, the packaging of that one uses plastic. Otherwise, I would eat it daily.
Yeah, you know what? As far as which nori is safe, I go by the place of the origin where the nori is harvested. And I usually use the ones from like Japanese grocery store in Nijiya. And I look at where it is produced. And I usually try to pick around like Hokkaido area because it's northern Japan. And I never tried the Trader Joe's nori, but the type of the nori that comes as a nori snack and they put lots of oils, then I worry about this a lot of oil because some of those delicious nori snacks are really drenched with oil and it's super oily. And another good source of the seaweed, if you wanted to eat, is Bragg's makes Seaweed Delight. And that seaweed is harvested from pristine Iceland water and it's organic. And I think that it's probably as the cleanest source as possible. And yeah, so that's sorry that that's the only thing that I can answer about it because I didn't know any specific studies that they check which origin is safer and what's the content of each product. Sometimes the place like a consumerlab.com, if consumerlab.com has some review, let me check consumerlab.com. If I see like a nori review in consumerlab.com, I will let you know. Oh, actually here I have a review. So let me, there is a review of the seaweed snacks. Interesting. So they, and it shows, let me go to the product review, and, you know, again, we don't have any affiliation. So the give me sea salt seaweed one was approved. But the ones that marine coast sea vegetables, ANC, and they didn't get approved because just cadmium and lead were being flagged, and sea snacks was not approved because the cadmium contamination. Trader Joe's were approved, but they do have a, you know, the cadmium level that they use as a cutoff seems like a 4.3 micrograms, and then this one has 4.1 micrograms. So it exceeds the limit for the children, and then at the borderline for the adults. So when you get cadmium exposure, you can sweat it out at sauna, and you can do the good exercise and you sweat it out, because you can sweat out cadmium by sweating. So yeah, that's my answer for the seaweed.
Thank you so much, Dr. Purnell. I think we're going to shift back to Chef Jess. There is a question, if you can share the website where you just read off some of that information. Thank you.
One of my favorite snacks, and I found out it was really bad, was a deep fried seaweed. And it's really interesting. In the UK, I've done cooking videos before, and they've asked me to make what they call seaweed. And you know what they do? They take bok choy leaves and they deep fry them. And when you deep fry bok choy leaves or anything green and you put it in oil, it creates this translucent look that seaweed has. And so it's interesting how a lot of these greens, when you deep fry them, will do that. Oh. All right, so let's get to cooking. So we're gonna add a whole bunch of mushrooms inside too. So I just wanted to introduce everyone to some funky mushrooms. We have H Mart, and even Sprouts now has a collection of just assorted mushrooms. These are oysters. So these are oyster mushroom. And then these are king oysters, or some people call them trumpet, and they're big. And then shimeji, or I only know the Japanese names for these, but they're all really nice mushrooms that you can use all of. You don't have to not use the stem or just use the tops, but all of this will provide a kind of umami flavor to our ramen. So we're going to use some of those. If you want, these are the trumpet ones, or the big ones. What you want to do is cut them at a diagonal so that when you get up to the top part, everyone gets a little piece of it. This mushroom is probably the closest to being meaty. Like you could grill this and it's got a nice bite to it that it feels like you're eating meat too. So let's get to cooking. All right. So we are going to come over here, and I've got a pot right over here that has sesame oil, specifically black sesame oil. Sesame oil has a very, 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 very low smoke point, but black sesame oil has a high smoke point. It's not easy to find. We're lucky because we have H Mart, 99 Ranch, and all these Asian markets, but it's called black sesame oil. So it's different, and you can actually cook with it or saute with it versus regular sesame oil, which will turn rancid if you cook it at too high of a heat. So I've got that heating up, and I'm going to add my ginger and then my garlic and the whites of my scallions. Okay, so all of that gets in, and we're going to saute that. Meanwhile, I'm going to show you what I have. So earlier today, I made kombu dashi, or stock. This is probably the one part of Japanese cuisine that brings the most flavor. They use a lot of different stocks to flavor whatever it is that they're going to make. When you're doing this for ramen, it's a whole bunch of bones usually. So what we're using today is kombu, which is what Dr. Purnell was saying was one of the healthiest. And then shiitake mushrooms. These are dry shiitake mushrooms. When you buy them, they are dirty, everyone. They carry a lot of dirt. They're not going to wash them before they dry them. So when you buy them and you bring them home, brush them off with like a toothbrush, or if you have a mushroom brush, but make sure you get the bottom right here because that's where the dirt likes to hang out. And I tell you to do that because if you don't, the dirt goes into this dashi. So this is going to be our base. Usually, if you weren't a vegetarian, what they would do is they would put what we call, well, you would put bonita flakes in it and you would make hondashi then. So bonita flakes being fish. So a lot of times people will ask, well, Japanese food is vegetarian or vegan? And I would say most of the time it isn't unless they've specifically said that they're using like a vegetarian or vegan dashi. Because most of the time it has bonita flakes inside of it. So I'm sauteing that up and then I'm going to add our flavor. So we need something to make this ramen-ish other than just the dashi and all of this. And so we're going to add two cool things. We're going to add miso and doubanjiang. Doubanjiang is also a fermented bean product. It's a fermented black bean. So this is a Chinese product and this is a Japanese product. This is very, very strong. This is a little bit more mild, but the combination of these two create a smooth umami effect that you wouldn't necessarily get if you don't add them. It'd be very bland if you didn't add something like this inside. So doubanjiang is what we make in Chinese food. We use to make mapo tofu or black bean chicken. There's like different dishes that use this black bean. So if you have it at home, keep it in your refrigerator. You can add it to different things and make different dishes. If you buy it, you will use it in other things. It has a lot of cool flavor. And then I'm going to add my miso. So I'm using white miso. And when I was talking to Dr. Purnell about this, this is very, very uncommon for me to do, cook miso. Because I've always thought that cooking miso will destroy the properties. And she was telling me that actually it's not that, it's the flavor. The flavor, you lose a lot of the flavor when you cook it too high of heat or put it in too hot of water. So since I'm just using it for a little bit of that flavor, I'm not that worried. So you've got this sauteed and ready to go. And then I'm going to add my stock. So we're going to bring that up to a boil. And then you can have all of your regular other condiments that you would have with ramen that are vegetarian or vegan. So I have bok choy, a little bit of bean sprouts that I'm going to add inside, and tofu. So in your recipe, you're going to get a recipe. Oh, you're going to get recipe for cha sao tofu. So usually we have cha sao, which is the pork. This is cha sao tofu. So it's marinated, then glazed. And we use tamari, so it's lower sodium, but then you can put a piece of this right on top. All right. So this is coming up to a boil soon. And while we're waiting for that, I'm going to shock you with the last ingredient that we're going to add. We're going to add soy milk. Can you see that? Maybe. Unsweetened soy milk. So you can buy unsweetened, I believe you can buy it probably at most supermarkets. I buy it in the Asian supermarkets. You can buy it sweetened. Make sure you're not buying the sweetened one for this. But this is going to give it a creaminess that you would get normally from like a tonkatsu miso ramen or something like that. So I'm just going to add 4 cups, about half of this. And if you look at it, it's starting to look more and more like a ramen broth. And then while that cooks, I'm gonna cream it up with a little of that sesame paste or the ground up sesames, just like that. And that's it. So I'm gonna let that simmer, add some mushrooms into it. If you want, you can add them now or you can add them later. It's up to you. But let me show you, when you do want to add the mushrooms in, so like say the oyster mushrooms, instead of cutting them, go in and peel them apart with your hand, just like that. And the way that you can tell if you can use the stem of a mushroom is when you kind of pinch at it, if it breaks apart in your hand. And you can use regular ramen noodles. I actually have tofu noodles. So you can get this kind. Konnyaku is another one that would be gluten-free. Everybody wants to know where to get a cheap blender. And it's a good one. Amazon. All right. So that is it. Okay. And then I'm going to let that come. Once it comes up to a boil and it's finished, I'll plate it up just to show everyone what it looks like with the noodles and all the garnish and the tofu too. So I'm going to let that sit now. The last dish I'm going to show you is our collard green lasagna. So our collard green lasagna, why, Jessica, why do you do this to us? Because I find it really interesting how we can incorporate more vegetables into our diet. So how do we do that? We take, oh yeah, you can get those noodles at Ralph's too. We go crazy with collards. I love collard greens. Collard greens are amazing just because of their size, and they're actually really easy to grow. If you've never been to our garden here at Susan Samueli, you should go outside and look. What I just wanted to show you is I boiled these in a water and then put them in ice cold water for a couple seconds. But if I take this leaf and if you look at it, I can stuff it with anything that I would normally stuff something with, whether it be ravioli, egg rolls, spring rolls. Think of this as a blank canvas of like a tortilla even, and make a burrito out of it. Collard greens are amazing for that. And that's what I've done with this kind of lasagna recipe too. So I'm making a small one just so that I can show you what to do. It is cast iron. I am putting tomato sauce. So the thing about cast iron and tomato sauce is that you're not going to be cooking it in a long time, like stewing. It's completely okay. So I'm going to take a little bit of homemade marinara, just like that. And then I'm going to put on just to coat the bottom. And then I'm going to break my noodles. So I know we all think that we need to buy no boil lasagna noodles. They are all the same, everyone. They don't need water. You do not need to boil your pasta ahead of time. It really works well with the amount of moisture that's already in there. Cottage cheese, ricotta cheese, and mozzarella cheese. So the ricotta and the cottage cheese, just so that you're lightening up a little bit. No egg, nothing like that. I'm just going to take a little bit of this now. I'm going to put it right on top. Squish it around. And then I'm going to take my collard leaf and I'm going to put it right on top. So you can use your collard leaf to kind of help push it down if you want. And then go back around and around. And really give it a good push because it shrinks down quite a lot. Now I'm going to use more tomato sauce right on top and continue layering. So then now I'm going to add more pasta. Just like that. Oh, And if you've got a tray, I'll show you the one that I made ahead of time already so that you can see the final product. Continue doing this.
Chef Jess, while you're doing that, there's a question for you in the chat. If you can talk about how culinary medicine is integrated into the UCI medical school curriculum.
Ooh, that's a great question. So I have the honor of working with specifically students that are on the Heal IM track, as well as students who are interested in integrative medicine. So they're in their first and second year, and they sign up to be a part of this program that's a six module course. Each module emphasizes a different disease state, or we introduce them to the Mediterranean diet. And so each class, we're able to let the students kind of work on a case study that's related to the topic, and then cook food that they could potentially say this patient could use. So it's a great way for the medical students to be exposed to cooking, first of all, and then also for them to then realize how easy it is, and then potentially pass it down to their patients in the future. All right, so then that's it. If you want, I like sauce, and so I always say just do another layer of sauce, and then finish it off with a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And that just goes straight into your oven. Guess what? If you don't want to put this in your oven, put this like this in your freezer, and then defrost it overnight, and then put it in your oven the night before, or when you come home from work. And then when you finish baking it, this is the beauty that you get. So you get all these layers with pasta collared, and then the cheese right in between. So I'll cut a piece so that you can see. Need to stop walking around. Everything's on. Sorry if I'm giving people whiplash from like all the camera switching. We will get this. All right. So I'm gonna take this piece. Didn't cut all the way through. The only thing with this is when you're cutting it, because it is a leaf, sometimes they get stuck. There we go. So you've got this beautiful lasagna, just like that. You can see all the different layers as it tilts down. And then you're reducing the amount of carbs and getting a lot of veggies in your diet too. So there's the lasagna. Let's plate up the ramen. Switching back and forth, sorry. We've never worked with, I've been working with electric stoves right now. And one of the things that I find, so I'm going to give you the tips and tricks as I'm starting to learn how to work with it. It's really interesting. And Monica taught me this yesterday too. Residual heat on the electric stoves are incredible, to the point where if I turn it off and I don't remove it, it will continue boiling for like a good 2 to 3 minutes. Unless I tell it to stop. So I find it amazing. It's really cool, but at the same time, you want to be careful because it can go crazy. We got our broth. Okay. And we got our bean sprouts. And if you want it, you can put the noodles. I'll put noodles in at the end. Bean sprouts. I've got a blanched bok choy. And it's a baby bok choy, so it's smaller. So it does look a little bit, if you think it does look a little bit small, it is. And our tofu, like right on the side. You can do a couple pieces too if you want. And then we garnish with a little bit of scallions right on top. Just like that. And then you've got your ramen ready to go. Any other questions? I'm sure there are. Maybe.
Yes, there are more questions. This next question is for Dr. Purnell. Dr. Purnell, are sugar alcohols or polyols bad for people with SIBO? Any recommendations for substitutions?
Yeah, so when you have SIBO, actually it can cause, even like a SIBO or the IBS, some people might have more bloating. So you wanted to test it a little bit before that. And then other way is that, for example, when you cook, when you cook, like, for example, carrots, the vegetables in the low temperature, really small setting, and then the prolonged long cooking, actually, you can bring out the sweetness of the vegetables itself, or you can use fruit to sweeten. And when you have SIBO, you actually need to follow the SIBO specific diet. And depending on which phase of the treatment of the SIBO, the first phase, like if you wanted to control the SIBO and you wanted to reduce the fermentable oligo and disaccharide and polyol, so you wanted to avoid those things. So yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. One more question we have for you, Dr. Purnell. Can people who take medication to treat hypothyroidism eat soy and iodized salt?
So yeah, you can do that. The daily recommended amount is 150 micrograms per day. And even you get treated, that means you get the synthetic or the porcine or origin, like thyroid hormones that you're taking. However, your thyroid, unless you're after the complete thyroidectomy, then your body still have ability to make the thyroid hormones. And it's good idea to continue taking the safe amount of the daily intake.
Thank you. Chef Jess, we have a couple questions for you. Are the collard greens blanched?
Yes, they are blanched. And so they are blanched in hot water, and then I cool them down in ice water.
Thank you. And another question, can you batch make the kombu and mushroom broth and use them for a few days?
Yes, definitely. The kombu, the best advice I can give you is once it starts to feel a little slimy, it needs to come out of the water. So you can leave the kombu in there for about a day to get really to like extract all that flavor. But once it gets like really, really, really slimy, we should probably take it out. What can we use instead of lasagna together? You know what would be good? Mushrooms. Or like you could do layers of mushrooms and the collard greens. That would be a good one. Or you can make your own whole wheat lasagna sheets that are actually really easy too. Zucchini. Yes. Thank you, Camber. You are so smart. Or eggplant. Now we're going to go down a rabbit hole.
And then since we have a few minutes left, Dr. Purnell, I know there were some questions about coconut oil and olive oil. I don't know if you wanted to take a few moments just to speak about those two oils.
So as far as the oil and expiration date studies, these oils were not included with that literature. So, but I think that coconut oil is solid with the room temperature, and olive oil has a kind of lower boiling point. So I think that my advice is I do not have any specific numerics that what's actually putting to the test and published. But you wanted to make sure that when you buy the oils, then you get the expiration date is clearly documented. And then also it is in the dark color glass jar, not the plastic. And then you can, you open it. Once you open it, you preserve in the fridge. And actually the I mentioned about consumerlab.com. They did have some reviews on the olive oil, extra virgin olive oils, and also the coconut oil and MCT oils as well. So if you are interested in, like, you wanted to choose the third-party laboratory tested and approved brand of the products, then consumerlab.com is a great resource.
All right, we just had another question pop up about coconut oil. Since it's solid at room temperature, is that bad for your heart? Is it considered a saturated fat?
As far as coconut oil and cardiovascular disease, let me just go to PubMed. And you know that when we talk about, yeah, there are some literatures and the coconut oils being promoted heavily as healthy oil with a benefit and heart health. And I think there are some different literatures, but they are saying that coconut oil did not significantly differ from the olive oil as far as like a cholesterol impact, and also the consumption. So let me see. There are articles review the coconut oil consumption result in significantly higher LDL cholesterol according to some studies, and then because of that, I think the bottom line is the oil by itself is a processed food. So you wanted to focus on eating nuts or eating avocado as a better source of obtaining the healthy fat, or eating the low contaminated fatty fish, rather than relying on consuming and supplementing oil, because oil is processed food.
Thank you, Dr. Purnell. Chef Jess, everything looks amazing. We'll hand it off to you to close us up.
So thank you everyone for joining us. Next month, we will be talking about reflux relief with herbs and spices. And so if you're interested on how to use herbs and spices, we will be speaking on that topic next month on the 17th. And so we'll have the registration up shortly, probably by next week. And again, thank you everyone for attending, and keep coming. Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Dr. Purnell.
Thank you.